Hi, everyone, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today, I want to talk about a significant astrological transit with you, and that is the planet Mars is making a conjunction currently with the south node of the moon. Now, for those who aren't familiar with the South Node, it's not a planet, but rather a point in time and space that represents where at any given time our ego structure is the most comfortable, where it is the most made up, where we have sort of a self image or a consensus around who we are. And this can be personally or societally. Okay. So the South Node is currently in the sign of Virgo. And that tells us something very significant that we as a society right now are embodying this image of ourselves and this concept of ourselves as one of many things, right? An archetype can be many things, but Virgo is the archetype of improvement. So there's a couple things to say to that. One is a lot of us recognize we're in a mode of operation that can no longer sustain us, that we have to do things that improve us. And that means we really have to purify certain aspects of our consciousness, right? And we have to get clear on what is essentially needed of us to carry the great responsibility of the new world. But we cannot be aware of improvement without first experiencing crisis, which is another aspect of the Virgo archetype. Neglect, fear, avoidance. These are all words that describe what happens in Virgo because until we become aware of what we don't want to deal with and of what we're afraid to confront, we are going to end up in constant crisis and be constantly needing to thus improve, and we can choose to not improve. So, this whole theme around, it kind of feels right now like there's a lot of talk about what we could do to improve. There's a lot of sort of, and I do this all the time, theoretical bypassing. Oh, well, if we just were more loving people, if we were just, more ethical in our daily actions, our world would be a better place. It sure would, but are we embodying that? Are we embodying the medicine of our own wisdom? Right? That is the Virgo archetype. It's healing with the medicine of our own mistakes. So, that describes a place we are ego wise. Ego wise meaning it is how we are consciously taking in this reality and positioning ourselves in it. So there can be the distortion, right, of people here to save the world, people here to make all the pain in the world go away, and we're finding that we still can't do that. Or some of us are embodying the whole, what can I do? It's all a mess anyways, the world is screwed. It's these extremes of nihilism and then masochism of trying to improve everything and make everything perfect at once. So this colors our collective ego, our personal ego experience, our conscious experience of a relationship with the world. Okay. So the South Node is always an ego structure we need to release. It's something that's actually blocking the work. And I think that what that tells us about the South Node in Virgo is that something that's blocking us right now is this incessant need to change people or to change our world or to change from this same mindset that destroyed the world. Virgo is ruled by Mercury, right? And Mercury is about the inner workings of the mind and mental processing. So there's this release we need to give up on the way we've been thinking and acting. Virgo's an earth sign, so it's the way that we think practically. It's the way that we think, scientifically. It's the way that we think about, cures and disease and health and working through suffering. And, Virgo has all its medicines, it has all its strategies, it has all of its, theories, Mercury, a lot of theory. But that's not where we need to go right now. Where we need to go, the cosmos tell us, is the North Node. So that's where the ego needs to develop. That's where we need to build a new conscious relationship with our current reality. And the North Node is in the sign of Pisces. Pisces doesn't necessarily have the medicine cabinet full of solutions or the theories. Pisces has this understanding that we, wherever we are in this moment, are connected to every other moment, past, present, future, that we're part of something eternal, that, the human experience is one experience in a vast cosmic experience. In other words, Pisces takes us beyond the gotta fix it, gotta make it better. And it shows us that things have their cycles and that people have their issues. And Pisces ultimately teaches us this lesson in compassion, and compassion on a more universal level, because Pisces is related to the whole. If Virgo is a slice of the pie, Pisces is every single ingredient it took to make that pie. So Pisces opens us up to the element of water, okay? And that's about feeling. But Pisces isn't like Cancer feeling, which is how do I feel, or Scorpio feeling, which is like how are we feeling. Pisces feeling is like the feeling of the divine, the feeling of the whole, the feeling of the global or cosmic or universal. So that means that we actually have to get really comfortable surrendering control and knowing that what we can control, perhaps, is making ourselves available to that eternal experience to use us and to direct us. And really, what I mean by that is not that we stop acting or stop improving or give up on our world entirely, but rather we step down from this machine we've been using to tweak and control the world, Virgo, and we turn around from that machine and we take a look out at the world and we let something inspire us, or we let someone teach us, or we let, the isness of life inform our next steps. In Pisces, we experience a huge slowing down. So that is where we are developing as a collective ego. That is where there is work to do, what's uncomfortable, letting go, being in the unknown, recognizing we are all connected, and learning to listen. Pisces is where Venus is exalted, and Venus is about listening. I mean, it's like we are learning to listen to others, but to the other others, to the environment, to the breath, to all of these things that are more unconscious, right? Pisces is the collective unconscious. So it's letting ourselves be guided by that soft, still voice within, as opposed to Virgo, all the theories, all the guilt, all the things I need to fix, all the, all the methods, all the scientific methods. Pisces is slowing that down, following our inner wisdom, element of water, intuition, and universal intuition, universal spirituality. So let's go back to Mars. So Mars is on the south node right now. And whenever there's a planet conjunct the south node, Jeffrey Wolf Green, an evolutionary astrologer, the founder of evolutionary astrology, said that that planet would describe, at any moment in time, a tendency that we will either transform or be doomed to repeat, at the same level of consciousness we've been repeating it at. Mars is our capacity to initiate action, to move forward with our instincts. And when Mars is in Virgo, the instinct can be, again, going back to that broader archetype, to avoid, to neglect, to actually, invest our energy in just pointing out everybody else's flaws, in criticizing everybody else, in being so focused on sort of the external world and how it needs to change for us that we actually neglect our own changes. And I think what Mars and Virgo does, if we let it, is it lets us humble ourselves to where we haven't been taking the right actions. It lets us see where we haven't been um, taking our own medicine. And why have we not been taking our own medicine? Well, because the polarity of Pisces still hasn't been awakened, which allows us to accept our mistakes, to move beyond them, to find compassion for them. You know, whenever we're dealing with the nodes or opposite signs, we're dealing with signs that give healing to each other. And so part of what this Mars in Virgo, I think, is all about is that it's about allowing us to address our imperfections and work towards fixing them as a society, but in a way that isn't rooted in guilt, that isn't rooted in fear, that isn't rooted in I'm doing something wrong or we're doing something wrong, but is rather inspired by the possibility of a more compassionate and understanding world that sees the innocence we're born from, that sees how that innocence never leaves us and curses through our oneness and our togetherness. So, for this experience personally, you're going to want to check the house where you have Virgo. This is an area that could potentially be showing up with a lot of neglect, or there could be sort of a lot of procrastination, or there could be a lot of fear, right? A lot of judgment around yourself. And that Mars in Virgo says, are you going to keep reacting to that judgment you have about yourself? Or are you going to learn to sort of work, that Mars energy, that need to take action, that need to move forward? And are you going to bring it into Virgo where there is this, day by day process of growth? What's funny about Mars in Virgo is Mars wants to move really fast, right? It rules Aries, it's a fiery planet. But Virgo is an earth sign, and earth moves slow, and earth is practical, and earth is methodical. And so we need to slow down this Mars, right? We need to bring it into the earth element where we can really improve and work to, do what we can day by day. And then Pisces polarity release the result, right? So Virgo teaches us the humble action that we take day by day, the humble improvements we make day by day. Pisces is the part where we surrender those improvements, where we surrender it to the imperfection that makes our wholeness perfect, that makes us all together, one soul having multiple experiences. So, I will leave that to you to interpret for yourself and let my own words sort of sink in and marinate within you. And then I'd love to hear your ideas about this transit in the comments. One other thing I didn't mention is just as you should check the house where you have Virgo to sort of see where there's some big work going on. Check the house you have Pisces to show almost where the rewards of this work are. Like, if I can take, for example, ownership Pisces in the fourth house, or sorry, Virgo in the fourth house, if I can sort of work through family issues, emotional issues, working with my own improvements that I need to make in that area, I begin to see myself more as an independent adult, and I'm less held to, the guilt or the grudges that I hold around family. Now I can see that as I do that, I'm no longer the little helpless child. I'm no longer, at the behest of a cruel mother or a cruel father. By forgiving them, I actually claim my own independence and claim my own sovereignty, which can recognize us as sovereign individual beings, having these very similar universal human experiences. So, Pisces Virgo, very big access, one I am always extremely interested in, because it really is this area of the zodiac that teaches us what we can control, Virgo, and everything we can't, Pisces. So Mars in Virgo. How can I take actions that don't, make me feel guilt, but make me face on some level an improvement that needs to be made. And Pisces, how do I feel the compassion for myself as I make this improvement? And how do I work on surrendering the work of improvement to the greater whole and thus step into a conscious new relationship to the world that's full of more understanding, empathy, hope. So I hope that helps. And I'll talk to you guys next time. Bye.